What if the most dangerous thing you could do at a dinner party wasn't, insulting the host, but actually giving them a compliment?
Well, it sounds completely counterintuitive, doesn't it? I mean,
Right.
we're basically conditioned from childhood to view flattery as this ultimate social lubricant.
You're right. It's supposed to be how you make friends and influence people.
Exactly. But if you look closely at the underlying mechanics of the human ego, a compliment can actually function as a weapon. It can be a highly calculated trap designed specifically to blind the recipient.
Wow, that concept completely changes how you view a crowded room. You start seeing polite conversations not as friendly exchanges, but as like tactical maneuvers.
Oh, absolutely. It's a whole psychological minefield out there.
And to you, our listener, thank you so much for sending us the perfect map for navigating this minefield. You shared this amazing digital snapshot with us straight from the Internet Archive.
Yeah, it's a fascinating find.
It really is. It's a French etiquette manual from the year 1810, published in Paris by Le Prieur. The title is L'homme de bonne compagnie, which translates to the man of good company.
We should probably clarify our mission here for this deep dive because the way we're approaching this source material is quite unique.
Yeah, we aren't actually reading the full text of this manual, right?
Right, exactly. We are focusing exclusively on a few preserved pages of its index. Specifically, we're looking at the table of contents covering parts 5 and 6, which are found on pages 374 through 378.
Okay, let's unpack this because usually an index is just about the driest part of any book. It's just a utilitarian list of topics.
Eerie, yes.
But this specific table of contents reads like a psychological thriller. I mean, the chapter titles alone are these dramatic, highly specific warnings about human nature.
They really are. And so our goal today is to deconstruct these chapter titles to uncover the timeless mechanics of the ego, the art of praise, and the unwritten rules of social survival.
So where do we start?
Well, to really grasp the value of what we're looking at, we have to look past the superficial implications of the title. I mean, the man of good company strongly suggests a shallow guide on, like, which fork to use for the salad course.
Right. Or how deep to bow when greeting a duke, that sort of thing.
Exactly. But the index reveals the author's true, much more profound intent. This is not about table manners or just superficial polite society.
It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. The author explicitly states in these pages that they are cataloging the flaws of the mind and heart. It's basically a survival guide for the human ego.
Wow, okay. And we see that underlying psychology immediately in how the author addresses the way we present ourselves to the world.
Yes, the very first thing.
The index outlines an early section focusing on the desire for a great reputation and the thirst for praises, but rather than telling the reader how to successfully achieve that glorious reputation, the author just immediately pivots.
Right. The text starts warning us about people who praise themselves, the braggarts.
And the phrasing the author uses in the index to describe boasting is just so striking to me. They don't call it arrogance or vanity.
No, they refer to boasting as le saut périlleux, the perilous leap.
A perilous leap. That imagery is incredibly vivid.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does. When you think about taking a leap, you willingly leave solid ground. You propel yourself into the air, and for a terrifying second, you have absolutely zero control over your own safety.
You're completely dependent on gravity.
Exactly. Or, well, in this social context, you are entirely dependent on your audience to catch you with their applause or their validation. And if they don't buy your boast,
You crash.
you crash hard.
What's fascinating here is the psychology behind that leap because it completely reframes how we view arrogance.
How so?
Well, the author doesn't frame boasting as a mere social annoyance like, someone just talking too loudly at a party. It is framed as a genuinely dangerous act that actively jeopardizes your social standing.
That makes sense.
And the index highlights this strange, almost universal contradiction in how human beings execute this leap. It lists libertines who take vanity in their debauches, placed directly next to people who take vanity in their restraint.
Wait, let me make sure I'm understanding the contrast there. A libertine, so someone who basically lives for excess, chasing earthly pleasures, drinking, ignoring moral restraint.
Right.
They're using the exact same social mechanism as someone who is incredibly disciplined and restrained.
Precisely. The author is isolating the core mechanism of vanity here, proving that the actual behavior is totally irrelevant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, one person is boasting about wild, unrestrained partying until dawn, while the other is boasting about their extreme asceticism, their strict diet and their early bedtime.
So the behaviors are diametrically opposed, but the psychological drive is identical.
Exactly. Both individuals are experiencing this desperate, gaping need to be perceived by others as exceptional. The action they're bragging about is merely the vehicle. The destination is always self-elevation.
Oh, man. It feels uncomfortably similar to the modern phenomenon of humble bragging.
Oh, it really does.
You see someone post a meticulously posed, heavily filtered selfie from a luxury vacation, but they bury the photo under a completely unrelated, self-deprecating caption about, like, how much they struggle with inner peace.
Right, right.
But the core intention is still the perilous leap. They desperately want the social elevation, but they're trying to trick the audience into catching them by pretending they aren't actually jumping.
And that trick rarely works, because human audiences are highly attuned to the mechanics of ego. We can spot the leap even when it's disguised like that.
We really can.
And when that perilous leap of boasting inevitably fails, when the audience just refuses to catch you, the ego requires an immediate defense mechanism.
Because it's bruising to crash.
Exactly. If you cannot successfully elevate yourself, the easiest, most primal alternative is to bring everyone else down.
Right.
And the index captures this dynamic perfectly as the topics transition into warnings about jealousy and unearned status.
The progression from failed boasting to active jealousy makes perfect logical sense. The ego has to protect itself somehow.
It does.
So the index lists notes on the pride of birth, targeting people who are continually citing their ancestors.
Yeah, and then the author dismisses this entire concept of inherited worth with just a brilliant phrase: grandeur, chimerical, or imaginary greatness.
Imaginary greatness.
Ouch. We connect this to the bigger picture. The concept of chimerical greatness is crucial for understanding the author's critique of the societal structure of the time.
Right, because when your entire social standing, your wealth, and your influence rely exclusively on who your great-grandfather was, you possess no intrinsic personal merit.
Exactly. You are essentially demanding respect based on a ghost. And the text dissects the fragile nature of this unearned status.
Because it isn't real.
Exactly. And because it isn't real, it breeds a very specific type of toxic behavior, which the index categorizes as outraged impertinence.
You know, seeing chimerical greatness and reading about people who constantly bring up their famous ancestors makes me wonder, is this essentially 1810's version of the modern nepotism baby debate?
Oh, that's a great comparison.
I mean, we spend so much cultural energy today dissecting whether people in positions of power or in the entertainment industry actually earned their spot through talent, or if they're just resting on inherited laurels.
The parallel is incredibly strong, and the core tension is identical. Society fundamentally resents influence that isn't tethered to personal capability or hard work.
Right.
And the index provides a devastating label for these individuals resting on those laurels. It calls them important without importance.
Important without importance. That is such a sharp analytical critique.
It really cuts to the core of it.
It completely deflates the person who walks into a room demanding deference and taking up space without having contributed anything of actual value to justify that demand.
And because that status is entirely unearned and imaginary, it is perpetually vulnerable to reality.
Right, like they know they're faking it on some level.
Exactly. The individual subconsciously knows they're without importance. Therefore, they must fiercely protect their illusion of greatness, which manifests as intense systemic jealousy.
Which the index actually maps out, right?
Yes, it systematically details this. It lists the jealousy of vain women toward their rivals, alongside the jealousy of men regarding the successes of others, specifically noting their underlying desire to erase them.
Desire to erase them? That's so dark.
It is. When you cannot generate your own genuine merit, the only way to maintain the illusion of superiority is by actively minimizing, criticizing, or entirely erasing the real achievements of the competent people around you.
So, okay, we've established that boasting is a clumsy, dangerous leap, and relying on your ancestors is just imaginary greatness that leads to toxic jealousy.
Correct.
So naturally, you might assume the safest route in society is simply to take the focus off yourself. Focus on other people, give them compliments, be the person who praises everyone else in the room.
That would be the logical assumption,
Yeah.
yes.
But this index turns that assumption completely upside down. Giving a compliment is presented not as a kindness, but as a highly complex, potentially weaponized interaction.
The phrasing here really underscores the immense complexity of social dynamics. There's an entire section titled The Difficulty of the Art of Praising.
Yeah.
It explicitly warns the reader about eternal praisers, people who dispense foolish or false praise, and particularly something it calls the flattery of princes.
I found myself incredibly frustrated that we only have the table of contents for this part of the deep dive because the index teases some fascinating historical case studies that we can't actually read.
Oh no, it's such a tease.
Right in the middle of this section on the difficulty of praising, it lists a beautiful trait of Muhammad II and a word of Pythagoras.
Yeah, that's quite a lineup.
The fact that the author is pulling in a legendary 15th century Ottoman sultan and an ancient Greek philosopher just to explain the mechanics of giving a compliment shows an intense level of intellectual weight applied to everyday conversation.
It really does. The inclusion of those towering historical figures suggests the author views praise not as a casual throwaway courtesy, but as a mechanism of immense power and potential manipulation.
Wow.
And the most striking warning in this section centers on insidious praises and the blindness they cause. The manual explicitly links the act of flattery to the concept of seduction.
Okay, let's explore the actual mechanics of that blindness. Why does a compliment make us blind?
Well,
Actually, if I think about a modern equivalent to insidious praise, it reminds me of a very specific corporate maneuver, the toxic performance review.
oh, the classic compliment sandwich.
Yes, exactly, the compliment sandwich. A manager sits you down and starts by telling you you're a vital pillar of the company culture. That warms your ego. It feels really good.
Right, your guard is down.
Then they casually slide in the news that you're being passed over for a promotion and they need you to take on more unpaid overtime. But before you can fully process the bad news, they follow it up with another glowing compliment about your unwavering team spirit.
That is an excellent demonstration of the mechanism the author is warning about. The flatterer uses praise to deliberately bypass your critical faculties.
Sneaky.
It is. Human beings have a profound, hardwired psychological craving for validation. When someone tells you exactly what your ego desperately wants to hear, your brain's defense mechanisms effectively shut down.
Wow, so you literally don't see the trap.
You don't. You are flooded with positive reinforcement, which seduces you into a state of voluntary blindness. You fail to see the flatterer's true motives, which, in your corporate example, is making you compliant and agreeable to an unfair situation.
Right.
The insidious praise is the sweet bait that hides the hook.
And that mechanism of manipulation through praise leads directly into the broader themes outlined in the next section of the index. This is where the manual outlines how society collectively punishes those who fall victim to their own egos.
Yes, the public's revenge.
It establishes a stark contrast between modesty, which the index notes is always well placed, and what it calls sot fierte, foolish pride.
The manual becomes incredibly analytical here regarding the illusions of self-love and the concept of voluntary blindness. And it is worth noting that it directs a significant portion of this critique toward gendered expectations. It specifically lists pretensions of women to beauty, explores their dupery, and warns of something ominous called the public's revenge.
Okay, I need to push back on the author's framing here, or at least analyze the social context they were writing in. Isn't this public's revenge a profoundly rigged game?
This raises an important question, actually.
If we look at Parisian society in 1810, or really, society in almost any era, beauty is strictly demanded from women as a primary form of social currency.
Absolutely.
But the moment a woman tries to hold on to that currency as it naturally fades or shows any visible pretensions about maintaining it, this index suggests that the exact same society that demanded the beauty in the first place will ruthlessly punish her for trying to keep it.
Your skepticism is entirely justified, and it points to a deep hypocrisy embedded within social structures. The book serves as an unvarnished mirror, reflecting that exact ruthless reality.
It's so unfair.
It is. Society establishes an impossible standard, but it fundamentally disguises the visible effort required to maintain or pursue that standard.
Ah, I see.
The public's revenge is not solely about beauty. It's society's collective mechanism for punishing individuals who expose the artificiality of the rules everyone is silently agreeing to pretend are natural.
Right, the unwritten expectation is effortless perfection.
Exactly. Effortless.
If you show the work, or if your self-love is exposed as an illusion, the collective turns on you. And the index shows this dynamic isn't exclusively about physical appearance either.
No, not at all.
It mocks what it calls a false delicacy of organs, specifically citing two sybarites.
Right.
And a sybarite being someone devoted to extreme luxury and pleasure. So I imagine this refers to people who affect this incredibly refined, fragile sensitivity.
Exactly, yes.
Like, the person who claims the air in the room is simply too coarse for their delicate lungs, using their supposed fragility as a marker of high status.
That is exactly the behavior being targeted. It is the affectation of extreme refinement weaponized as a status symbol.
So interesting.
And the author categorizes all of these behaviors, clinging to fading beauty, faking a delicate constitution to appear wealthy, or claiming chimerical greatness based on your ancestors under one devastating metaphor listed in the index.
Oh, I love this one.
They're described as jays adorned in the feathers of the peacock.
That imagery is absolutely brutal.
It really is.
I mean, a jay is a relatively common, unremarkable bird. In this metaphor, the jay is desperately gluing glamorous, iridescent peacock feathers onto its own body, strutting around and praying that the rest of the flock doesn't notice the adhesive.
Right, hoping no one looks too closely.
It perfectly encapsulates society's universal, visceral disdain for the imposter. We hate seeing someone try to claim a level of status or importance that isn't authentically theirs.
The disdain is universal because the imposter threatens the integrity of the entire social hierarchy. If anyone can glue on feathers, then the feathers lose their meaning.
Right, totally.
After mapping out this incredibly dense minefield of social traps, the perilous leap of the braggart, the toxic jealousy of the unearned aristocrat, the blinding seduction of the flatterer, and the foolish pride of the jay in peacock feathers, the index finally pivots to a solution.
And thank goodness, right? How does one actually survive and thrive in good company without stepping on a mine?
It's the ultimate question.
It's a vital question, because if you read through this long list of warnings, the natural instinct would be to just stand silently in the corner of the room, completely terrified to open your mouth.
Just hide.
Yeah, you can't praise yourself, you shouldn't rely on your background, giving compliments is dangerous, and any pretension will invite the public's revenge.
It sounds impossible.
But the final entries of the index offer a roadmap out of the trap. It emphasizes the absolute necessity for neatness and precision in language. And then it introduces the golden rule of social survival, finding the juste milieu.
The juste milieu translates directly to the happy medium, or the exact middle ground.
So what does this all mean? In modern terms, finding the juste milieu seems to be the 1810 equivalent of successfully reading the room.
That's a great way to put it.
It is the emotional intelligence required to tune yourself to the exact right frequency of the environment you are currently in.
It requires profound situational awareness. The index elaborates on this by detailing the art of making one's advantages and talents valued in order to achieve the true tone of good company.
Right.
If we synthesize all the chapters we've analyzed, the ultimate takeaway for you, our listener, is a philosophy of supreme balance.
Okay, lay it out for us.
You cannot survive by being entirely passive or invisible. You must understand your own talents and ensure they are recognized and valued by the group. But you must achieve this without ever making that dangerous, perilous leap of the braggart.
So you have to project quiet confidence without demanding the audience catch you.
Exactly. Furthermore, you must be polite and agreeable, navigating social interactions smoothly, but without ever crossing the line into becoming the insidious flatterer who blinds people with seductive praise.
It's walking a tightrope.
You must speak with crisp precision, completely avoiding the foolish pride and illusions of the imposter. The juste milieu is not a static place you arrive at and rest. It is a continuous, active tightrope walk over the psychological minefield of human interaction.
It is a delicate balancing act that clearly hasn't changed in over 2 centuries.
Not a bit.
To you, the listener, we are incredibly grateful you sent this source material to us. It is staggering to realize that a mere table of contents from a forgotten 1810 Parisian manual could provide such an accurate, almost uncomfortable mirror for our own modern insecurities.
It really is uncanny.
We might use different terminology today, but the mechanics are identical. The humble brags, the debates over unearned privilege, the manipulative corporate compliments. It is the exact same psychological architecture, just dressed in different clothes.
Technology evolves at a rapid pace, but the underlying mechanics of human nature remain remarkably constant. The flaws of the mind and heart that this author cataloged do not receive software updates.
No, they don't.
The ego functions today exactly as it did in the high society salons of 19th century Paris.
Which brings us to a final, slightly provocative thought experiment to leave you with.
I like the sound of this.
Well, while reviewing this source material from the Internet Archive, there was a specific feature listed in the metadata that caught my attention. It is a button labeled Save Page Now.
Oh, right.
The archive describes this tool as a way for users to capture a web page as it appears now for use as a trusted citation in the future.
It basically functions as a deliberate, instantaneous digital time capsule.
Precisely. Today, we utilize an archive to peer backward. We judge the vanity, the arbitrary rules, and the social traps of high society in 1810. We dissected their braggarts and laughed at their desperate attempts to wear peacock feathers.
We did.
But I want you to imagine a scenario. 200 years from now. Imagine the digital historians of the 23rd century utilizing that Save Page Now feature.
Oh, boy.
Imagine them pulling up our archived social media profiles, our meticulously curated feeds, and our professional networking pages, using them as trusted citations of how human beings interacted in our era.
It begs a fascinating question. What kind of table of contents will those future historians write about our specific flaws of the mind and heart?
Right.
Will they analyze our digital footprint and conclude that we successfully navigated this psychological minefield? That we mastered the just milieu, engaging in genuine connection and precise language?
Or when they unroll the archived map of our digital lives, will they look at our heavily filtered photos, our humble bragging captions, and our endless streams of compliment sandwiches and see something entirely different?
It's a sobering thought.
Will they see a society that learned nothing from the past, looking at us as just another massive flock of jays desperately gluing on the feathers of the peacock, hoping nobody notices the adhesive? It is something to seriously consider the next time you prepare to take a perilous leap of your own. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material.